One thing that I didn't like, let's talk about misconceptions about fatherhood, right? There was one thing that I didn't realise. So when they say about feeding every 3 hours, the baby, I assume that's during the day.
Right.
So when they told me they feed every 3 hours in the night time, I was like, why? Why would they need to eat in the night? And for me, that was the number one thing. I was like, I didn't know about this. I was not prepared for that throughout the night. What would you say was the biggest misconceptions you had about
the other end, the volume of... My mate was like, what's the best thing you should have? He said nappy bin. And I don't want these fancy nappy bins with a lock off. No, that's rubbish. Don't want that. It's just normal rubbish. Okay, when you sit there with 14, 15 nappies and then I got this piling up, I was like, okay, this is why it might be a way that it started. It's like, okay, just stop. You realise every 3 hours going in, 3 hours coming out the other end. And that thing, the amount of volume of stuff, and when you have your child gets older, it's lessons and lessons. Then the second one comes along and you go, oh, we're back to this again. Seriously, back to this volume of nappy. So the nappy thing is a big one.
What about you guys? What are your biggest misconceptions about
Gosh,
fatherhood?
man, I think definitely around the sort of sleep deprivation area. Like, I mean, people would tell me, you know, mate, listen, get your sleep in now, because things are going to change. And I'm like, okay, like, cool, but surely it can't be like there must be, come on, dude, like, seriously, you got bags, but come on. Do you know what I mean? And then it was like, right, I'm always tired. And it just that, the amount of attention and like how constant and consistent you had to be as a parent to the needs of this baby that is completely just dependent on you. And I think, though I was aware, but it's just being even more aware and being like, okay, right, I'm not going to get much sleep tonight. And actually my wife does need, I do need to play a role in terms even the night feeds, and even if it's not little I can do, she's breastfeeding, but having to actually be up and sort of support. At times, obviously, we negotiate that, and if I'm working, she's going to give me some leeway and say, okay, there were times when she was like, look, I'm going to be up and, just sleep, you've got work tomorrow. But then there were times when actually I did need to kind of be like, okay, I'm just going to have to make the sacrifice, irrespective of whether or not I'm going to be tired tomorrow morning. Actually, it just has to be done. I have to stand by and play my role. And I think that was definitely a wake-up call.
That's hard, isn't it? Yeah.
You know the sleep thing, though? So I learned that they were going to wake up at 3, because apparently when we were cavemen, that was the safest time to feed. Okay. So this was the nonsense research I did to prepare myself in life. But
Cro-Magnon.com.
But what was weird, so what was it? So I prepared myself. I was like, I'll wake up at 3, But what I didn't realize was you've just about fall asleep at 10, and then you wake up at 3, and then they wake up at 6. I thought, during the day he will sleep, or there'll be some point where he will sleep. Nah, man, it was the worst. But I did used to catch up coming back from work, and this whole thing, don't hold your baby too much, don't get attached and stuff. I threw that out the window straight away. All these rules I said I wouldn't do, I broke them myself, Straight away, grabbed him, picked him up, went to sleep, fell asleep on the sofa with him. I mean, I regretted it when he was 9-10 months. I still had to hold him to sleep. The first 6-9 weeks, it was worth it, because I was like you, man. I was going into work like a zombie, putting my password in about 17 times. I discovered coffee. People ask me, what are you doing today? I was like, I just put a meeting in and I'm going to sleep. Just put me in it. But
So let's talk about advice, in terms of advice around fatherhood. So we know that, and I guess one thing about this, we spoke about telling our experiences and stuff like that, but not trying to say this is how you should do it, because everyone has their own way of doing it. But we know that everyone likes to give advice when you're about to have a baby. So what did you get advice from? Who gave you advice, and did you listen to it as well?
Everyone's got an opinion about it. It's like teaching. Everyone's got an opinion about it. Everyone's been to school, so everyone's done it. Most people have had kids, especially of older generations, they want to sort of say, oh, we do this, and it varies. I mean, and I don't know, I'm maybe a bit more grumpy and a bit more kind of just shut down on some of the advice, because it's I know you're well-meaning and all that, and I know your experience, but part of the fun is, and it's like you're saying, you're working out where you stand in this, and whether your so-called red lines that you're going to put in before you have a kid actually stand up, or whether you feel and then as you learn your gut instinct. I mean, there's other stuff you need to talk things through. I'm sure maybe I less so than my wife need to talk with her mum and her sister about stuff, but a lot of it I just seriously, I don't want to be told that this is the bit of kit you need because it's got a sensor that does that. Or I don't need to be told that what you're going through now is a 4-month regression period. Oh, you should have expected that. And then when the clocks go forward, this is going to happen. It's like, fine, all right, of course. Is your child not eating broccoli yet? No, I can barely get a breadstick and a bit of cheese. It's like leave me be. You're passing on because the advice comes with the guilt and it comes with that thing. That's the bit I think I railed against. Not the advice, the actual. What are you doing with that advice? How are you trying to make maybe more my wife than me feel? Because whatever, I didn't drop him today. Good. I'm a win. But it was the guilt placed on elsewhere, and I think there's a lot of that which maybe we don't get so much of as dads. But I think that was my take on advice. But I don't know, mate.
I think that's the thing. Like, what you got to bear in mind when this kid comes into the world, they know nothing, right? They know nothing, and everything you give them is everything they know. And any preconceptions you have before is because you have views on what you want your kid to be like before you have experience as a parent, So you're useless as a parent if you're always tired, grumpy, irritated. So you've got to find a way where you can be a happy, positive parent and enjoy the child whilst not being, going too loose on the sort of boundaries and rules you want to put in place. So the one concept I always used to have with my wife all the time was, okay, look, does this work for us, and is it doing him any harm? Because ultimately, we've got to feed him, we've got to put him to sleep, we've got to keep him alive, we want to give him a positive-ish attitude, but what we don't want to do is constantly create boundaries for ourselves that we then put pressure on ourselves when it's hard enough. So, like things like the sleeping thing, I was like, look, he's not sleeping, you've been trying for ages, it's not working. If I hold him and put him to sleep, you'll get some rest. I've been at work all day. I enjoy a little cuddle with him. He's gone to sleep. And right, fair enough. 6-8 months down the line, if it's a bad thing, we'll deal with it then. But right now, this is working. The same with like same with like the food stuff. And anyone give advice, I was always just like, thanks. You take it on board. But ultimately, it's your kid. And if anything goes wrong, I just want it to be like, if he turns out like he's spoiled, I want it because I spoiled him, right? At least I enjoyed spoiling. I don't mean he's spoiled because I listened to someone else about what to do. I didn't do it because then I feel like it's affecting my relationship with my kid, but also I feel like I haven't guided him how I wanted to, and I had every opportunity to. So, I rather take the sort of responsibility for that.
Yeah, no, I get it, man. I totally get that. I empathise totally because, and people do. I mean, everyone, like you said, everyone has an opinion. Everyone wants to give you advice about how they did it, and you quickly realise when you become a parent that, everyone's journey of parenthood can look so different. So incredibly different, and from people telling you about when you're going to stop breastfeeding and getting onto the bottle and what one you should use and whether or not they should be having a bottle, or maybe you should just try the bottle if breastfeeding isn't working, and all of this stuff, and you're just like, gosh, what we had to learn to do was to really come together and just be as long as we're of one accord, we're in agreement, and we're like, okay, we take on board. And whatever is for us, we think, okay, cool, we'll evaluate it. If it works, it works. And anything else, we just kindly put to the side, because there's just so much information, whether it's online, like you were saying, or like just from people and voices. We really had to sort of shut out the voices at a stage, just come together and be like, right, okay, what do we want? What's working for our child right now? And what was interesting is when we had our baby, during the pregnancy, we moved out of our flat, because we were trying to buy a house. So we were living with family at the time, and it was, so you can imagine you're living with family and, you're just in their space and they're in your space, and then we needed more space when the baby, so we were meant to move before baby came, but we were still there. And then we ended up moving when she was a bit, she was kind of months old. So it was really intense. Do you know what I mean? Looking back, I think, okay, actually it would have been nice to just have our own space a bit earlier. But yeah, it was really important for us just to come together and hibernate and be like, right, what works for us?
So how was that then, having a baby, living with family? I guess that must make it harder to ignore advice and opinions. Absolutely. How was that? How did you kind of deal with that?
You know what? I'm quite a calm person, and I think I could probably get that from my dad. He's always kind of taught me and trained me to just hold my tongue and be quite measured and just avoid confrontation and do my best to, okay, like whatever I hear, I may not agree with it, and if confrontation is going to make things worse, then I'll just retreat. we'll go back, we'll discuss it. As long as we're okay when we come out of the camp, then like we can survive. But that was really hard because you're right, when you're in your family space, they've got their own way of doing things. And because you're in their space, it's almost like there's more right, like you should be listening to what I'm saying because, you know, you're here and this. So, I think there were times when it was just that pillow talk, you know, those discussions when we had to really just be honest with one another, and me and my wife just talking, and, you know, me acknowledging when actually things were said that it's like, okay, that's not cool. And her obviously hearing me and supporting that, but also me supporting her, because actually a lot of the pressure does fall on the mum.
About this idea, about stuff around it. I mean, I remember a woman who was sort of like one of these parenting groups we went to before was like, she said, my friend's absolutely going mental, literally having mental breakdowns because she's trying to be this uber mum that does everything, that makes quinoa porridge for her kid and makes just does the whole thing. But like, as well as trying to deal with all the other stuff, you know, why? What is making you do that other than some external pressure that's now internalized to make you do something? You don't need to. And I remember every time we saw a health visitor, I was like, be worried. It's Halloween, and they're having this. I've got numerous stories about that, but it's like she's only really eating these kind of foods at the moment. She says, all right, if you're really worried, we had one that was like, God, this is terrible. What does mum think? I said, well, I'm here now, so. The other one was like, because obviously I don't. Anyway, but the other one was like, don't worry about it. Like, you know, this happens. If you're really worried, get a little vitamin drop. Stuff like, okay, so I can chill out, relax. And it comes from both what you're saying, like. If you and your partner are together on it, and it's a basis of how do we make this work for us, and then the one in the middle, the little person is, are they okay? Are they sleeping? Are they feeding? Are they getting to go to the toilet? Are they happy? Are they getting some time with us? The other stuff kind of.
You find like with your kid reacts, isn't it? Like as you grow, and it's so amazing how quickly they get personality. So you might think in your head, I want to feed them quinoa porridge. Yeah? You will learn very quickly, very, very quickly that, I don't want quinoa porridge. That's not what I want. I'm going to spit it in your face, give it to me all day long. So you learn and you adapt. And I think that's the one thing when you're preparing, isn't it? That's the big glaring omission, is that you don't know what their temperament's going to be, what their personality is going to be now. And a lot of the time, when the kid's cool, you think, it's great parenting. And when they're not cool, what am I doing? But it's not, though. It's another human that have their own sort of predisposed personality and temperament, and they react differently to different things. And I think that's again where that whole pressure thing comes in. You know, like if your kid doesn't sleep well, like mine didn't sleep well, you manage it in a different way. If they don't eat so well and you have to give, I don't know, an extra bottle of milk, so be it. So you find that balance.
I think for me, in terms of advice, so at work, there was loads of different people, you know, tips and advice, whatever. I would say the only, like, the real useful thing, we sat down with our vicar. Same before we got married, actually. So before we got married, we sat down with our vicar. It was a 2-day kind of course. And he kind of took us through, him and his wife took us through some of the things that we should expect to deal with. So not saying do it like this, but saying these are some of the challenges, these are some of the conversations you should have. And you guys work it out. But it was that kind of guided conversation and really getting us to think about some of the things that we probably wouldn't have thought about. Some basic stuff, like who's taking the bins out and who's cooking. And then some other quite extreme things around finances, around illness and sickness and, you know, in-laws. So that was really good. So after that, we said, let's do the same thing for baby prep. And that was amazing. It was just like literally 3-4 hours in his garden, him and his wife. And literally he just said, these are the things that you need to talk about. Talk about the night feed. Who's going to do the night feed? Talk about who is going to, you know, are you going to do shared parental leave, or are you going to, who's going to go part-time, or are you both going to go part-time? And so those sort of things where they seem obvious now because we've been through it, but before the first time, you don't even know they're things that you should think about.
You need to write those questions up.
Literally, that was amazing. I should bring him here. Shout out Colin.
Just bring your vicar along. This all out.
So based on that question then, what we're going to do, just to end, we're going to say, not one piece of advice, but one top tip. What have you learnt about fatherhood that you would say, do you know what, you would have wanted to have told yourself 2 months before you're about to have your first kid? What's the one thing that you...
For me, I would say, I would tell myself, be present and just like attentive, because it goes so quickly that actually if you don't just enjoy every day, every moment, you can look back and just think, like where did that time go? So really try to enjoy every moment, even the difficult parts, the difficult moments. Just try to be present in that moment so that it doesn't just pass you by and you're just like looking forward to the next stage, or when they start sleeping, or when they are on bottles, or do you know what I mean? So yeah, that's what I would say.
I'd say have more confidence with parenting. I think one of the things is when you're a new dad, if you change a nappy or you do something, it's like, oh, well done. You're like babysitting your kid. It's like, no, it's your kid, yeah? And as he's got older, most of the time, I'm like, when my wife wants to go, I'm like, go, just go. Like, I'm so happy just doing my own thing with him and parenting him the way I want to do it. And the first 6 months or so, I always felt a bit like I had to ask her, like, shall I do it? Am I doing it the right way? I had like people around me. I feel like now, if we were to do it again, I was saying to her the other day, I was like, oh, don't stress, because like, have the baby, I'll go off work, because I'll do it my way, it'll be fine. So I'll be like, have more confidence. Once you change a nappy once, it's like riding a bike, you can do it all the time. Once you pick a baby up once, you can do it all the time. Learn everything. If you're a bit nervous about anything, you can always ask people. But once you've got it, just be confident. Take them out on your own, look after them on their own. The worst thing that will happen is they'll cry for ages. That's it. That's the worst thing. They'll just cry for ages.
It does stop. I mean, they'll cry, and then at some point they'll stop crying, and for whatever reason it is. I think I agree totally with both of those. I think my one is that the guilt isn't real. Whatever it is with the wife or your partner or yourself, when it goes bad, usually because you're tired, the kid's crying, everything's not going right, you suddenly have these waves of, oh, I'm a terrible dad, I'm a terrible, you're a terrible wife. It feeds off each other in this frenzy of tiredness and all that kind of stuff. It's not real. None of it's real. None of it's the external forces that tell you this is how parenting should be. They're not real either. It's try and focus. It seems a little bit selfish, but build the bubble up, and the bubble's got to contain you two tagging in with the little one, and that's what everything you describe speaks to me about. You tag in, you tag out. You look when she's looking a bit knackered. There's about the frazzle's about to happen. All right, give me child. Let's go. And the same vice versa. Like, I'm wondering, and he's never going to sew. You're thrashing around on your shoulder. Like, tag it. So the guilt that you feel that makes you want to either keep going and stubbornly do something, or go, whatever it is, it's not real. That's the main thing.
Yeah. For me, it would probably be, it's going to be okay. Don't stress about, especially about like illnesses and sicknesses and stuff like that. I mean, there were times when my daughter would get like a temperature and we'd be really worried about it. And I say to my manager at work, so he had 3 kids, and he'd be like, by the 3rd one, unless their limbs dropping off, it's cool. I'm not going to hospital, I'm not going to doctors. And us, we like, so I'll go to work and be like, oh, I was up late last night, my daughter had a temperature. And, he'd kind of be like, she'll be okay. And I'm thinking, how can you say that? It's my daughter. But I think I'd probably be a bit more like, do you know what? Just it's probably going to be okay.